Okay, first grade, so you guys are just going to get some scrap paper here, and what I want you to do is I want you to just break this paper up into 4 sections. So just draw a line from top to bottom right in the middle, and then go side to side. So you have 4 sections, and we're just going to practice using some art media today, and you're going to just kind of pay attention to what you're learning and how you feel about each kind of technique that we're going to learn. So, up here in this corner, we're going to use oil pastel and we're going to blend. So, I'm going to write that up here. Blend, oil, pastel. This one is called the wet on wet technique. So, we're going to use watercolor paints. So, you guys can go ahead and write these down. Blend, oil, pastel, wet on wet. Down here, we're just going to call this one resist, so R-E-S-I-S-T. And this one's going to be colored pencil. Okay, so take a moment to write those down so you know which one is which. And I'm going to start with the blending of the oil pastel. Alright, so you need some oil pastels to get started here. And what you're going to do, you're going to color the color, and you want to press hard. Make sure it's nice and bright. Okay, and then you can grab a different color, layer it on top of this color just a little. So I'll just color a little right here. And then I'll keep coloring like normal. Okay, and these should start blending in with each other. Now you could take your finger and have them blend with your finger, or get a paper towel and wrap it around your finger like a band-aid and have it blend, or you can just kind of do what I'm doing here and layering on top of one another. So now I'll change colors again. Now I'm going a little bit on top and then coloring like normal. So I put a little yellow here on this orange, and you'll see it's kind of making a lighter orange. So you're blending colors together. Okay, so you guys can just play with that in this section. Okay, now next we're going to do wet on wet technique. Okay, so the next one that I'm going to do, I'm going to use watercolor paints. I'm going to do something called the wet on wet technique, and I'm going to blend with watercolor. So I need water, and I'm actually going to just put plain water on the paper, and then I'm going to get a color, and I'm going to get that nice and juicy and wet, and you're going to put that into the water. And I kind of like just to make little marks around the paper. Okay, and then you want to get another color, put that into the water, and you're going to see how these colors mix with one another. Now the key here with wet on wet is you don't want to get it too wet. Mine's a little too wet actually. So you just get the paper wet, put that paint in there, and you'll see how the colors start to blend into one another. So that's blending with the watercolor using a wet on wet technique. So get your paper wet, and then you put the wet paint into the wet paper, and that's why it's called wet on wet. Okay, so next one is resist. For this one I need oil pastels and watercolor paint. So I'm going to take oil pastel and I'm just going to make some designs here. Maybe I want to change colors. You can draw whatever you want. So you do that with oil pastel, and then you're going to take watercolor paint and you're going to paint directly on top of it. And what you're going to notice is that they don't do anything because oil and water don't mix. So the water is going to go right on top of that oil pastel and not do anything to it because they don't, it's like they don't like each other. So they avoid each other. So So as you see, as I paint here, the oil pastel stays there nice and pretty because it doesn't like the water. So the water just goes right over it. That's how you do a resist. So you can still see that oil pastel. So this is a cool way if you want like your outlines to still show up. You can outline it with oil pastel and then paint in the middle, and then everything will still be nice and pretty. Alright, so the last one we're going to do is colored pencil. So I want you to learn how to kind of layer and blend colors using colored pencil. So I'm just going to color in. Okay, and now I'm going to take like a purple. So this is like a light blue. Now I'm going to take like a violet-y and I'm going to layer on top. And you're going to see how that color becomes a little more rich, because it has the blue underneath of it instead of just the white underneath the paper. Now it has that blue underneath of it, so this color becomes a lot more vibrant. And you can do this with a lot of different colors. So maybe now I'll switch and I'll layer pink on top. And you can see what's happening there. It's kind of turning into a little purple kind of a color, a little violet. Put a little yellow on top, see what happens. Making kind of a green, because blue and yellow make green. So you can see how layering colors is really, really fun and neat. And you can play with a lot of different options here. So maybe now I'll just lay down some pink. And maybe I'll put a little green on it and see what happens. So you're blending colors in a different way. It's called layering instead really of blending. Okay, so these are 4 techniques that I want us to try and experiment with. So just to review, the first one is oil pastel and layering and blending with oil pastel. The second one is watercolor paint. You get the paper wet, you put wet paint into the wet paper. It's called wet on wet. Resist, oil pastel, you paint over it with watercolor paint. And then colored pencil, you just color and layer your colors to blend them.